Thank you, Holly. You spoke very eloquently about, again, how the family and traditions really do bring us all together and bring us forward. Our next speaker will be Dr. Gilbert Friend Jones. Dr. Gilbert Friend Jones, also known as Bud, is the senior minister of the First Congregational Church of Crystal Lake, Illinois. In June, he will celebrate his 40th year of ordained pastoral ministry. 15 of those years served here in the Twin Cities at Mayflower and Plymouth Congregational churches in Minneapolis. He is also a minister with the United Church of Christ. In addition to Illinois and Minnesota, he has served congregations in Virginia, Maine, and Georgia. A native of West Virginia, Dr. Friend Jones earned his doctorate at the predominantly African-American Howard University Divinity School in Washington, D.C. He earned his master's at Princeton Theological Seminary. He has published 2 books, When Easter Interrupts and Faith in a Minor Key. Please welcome Dr. Friend Jones.
Thank you so much. I loved hearing the rabbi. In every city I've ever worked in, I've always done Bible studies with rabbis, and I just appreciate the intelligent candor that rabbis bring to text, and how you hold on to it and you shake it and new things fall out. I just appreciate that so much. Well, Salam Bayanlar V. Bailar, and my many good friends who are here, Assalamu alaikum. Shalom alaikum. Grace and peace be unto you. Ahmed Bey, Genghis Bey, Kairat Bey, Sherif Bey, Jamila Hani, Ms. Anderson, thank you very much for extending to me the honor to participate in this evening's dialogue. Çok teşekkür ederim. The Niagara Foundation, the Bosphorus Dialogue Association, and your related partners worldwide are to be commended for your enthusiastic efforts on behalf of interreligious understanding. I think there's many here who don't know about the Niagara Foundation, the Backyard Bosphorus Association, and other groups. But they, you mentioned tradition and modernity. This is a worldwide network that really has brought together tradition and modernity in Turkish Islam. I mean, there's just no other, nothing like it in the world. You are committed to the most advanced education for both women and men, and not just in Turkey, but around the world, including Afghanistan and Pakistan. There is a saying in our tradition that the intellect is restless until it finds its home in the heart. I would like to say that your work, Niagara Foundation, you work tirelessly from the heart for a thoughtful and inclusive spirituality. As I have come to understand about Turks everywhere in the world, you are exceedingly generous. Your hospitality is overwhelming, and on behalf of all of us who are your guests tonight, I want to say thank you. I want to say teşekkür ederim. Çok teşekkür ederim. Ms. Farber and Professor Nizamuddin, it is a privilege to be here with you. I am grateful for the opportunity to hear your thoughts and the wisdom of your traditions as you interpret them concerning family life. And I want to commend everyone who's here, who made an effort to be here. For in so doing, you make it possible for us in this very room, in our time, to recreate the tent of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar. This tent is open to all, on all sides. This is the tent of hospitality. In an age that is consumed by violent warfare and partisan strife, it is important for us to sit together and share together at the table of fellowship. And if I may add one personal note, it is such a joy to me to return to this land of 10,000 lakes, Or is it 15,000? All frozen solid. and as many friends. Much of my ministry was shaped here, and I return as often as I can for renewal. As we engage in conversation about families, our own hearts are broken by the news that comes to us from the Middle East. We hold in our hearts and in our prayers tonight the families throughout the Middle East, the families who have lost loved ones, the families who have lost homes, jobs, economic support, the families who are themselves torn by the conflict that engulfs them. We hold in our hearts tonight and in our prayers the people of New Zealand who've been devastated by a succession of earthquakes. As we enjoy the fellowship, it is appropriate that we remember them as well. It is precisely for times such as we are living in today that we need strong and healthy families. When Muammar al-Gaddafi spoke to his people and the world yesterday, he used the language of family. He spoke of keeping faith with his fathers, of following his grandfather into martyrdom, of never abandoning the grave or the country of his grandfathers. I think he meant it. I believe his identity, his vocation, and indeed his very soul is enmeshed within his family's narrative and in an ancient honor code that is rooted in his family's multi-generational story. I believe it is delusional. I believe it is grandiose. It is pathologically paranoid, but it points to the importance of our subject tonight. As the psychiatrist Thomas More once said, the family is the nest of the soul. In nurturing healthy families and healthy souls, our three Abrahamic traditions share a great deal of common interest and common ground. Think about family for a moment. The family is for us a place of great intimacy and a place of vulnerability. It has, or it should have, an aura of permanency and endurance and stability, no matter what happens in the broader world. The family is an economic and social unit, to be sure, but it is much more. It is the place where our relationship with God is shaped, where it is nurtured and encouraged to develop. In preparation for this presentation, I asked my friends on Facebook to tell me what they thought, our core family values rooted in our faith traditions. Most of who answered were Christians, and most of their answers ring true in all three of our religious traditions. They said, loving one another, respecting one another, accepting each other, being honest, maintaining a good sense of humor, trusting and being trustworthy, taking care of one another, communicating even when it is difficult, being patient, forgiving, being God-fearing, having faith in one another regardless of the circumstances, being committed to moral and ethical behavior, learning from mistakes, living by the golden rule, praying together at the dinner table, eating together, spending time together, enjoying recreation together, having recreation apart as well, freely sharing affection. And another one added simply, WWJD, which means, what would Jesus do? But if we look more deeply into this, for Christians at least, it becomes more complicated. Families, in many configurations, they come in many configurations. Families, we know, are single people, and heterosexual couples, and homosexual couples, and married, divorced, widowed, people living together, with children, without children, some by birth, some by adoption, some simply by circumstance, in large multi-generational groupings, or in isolated nuclear family arrangements. Surely Valjean and Cossette are family in Les Mis, though not related through any conventional means. For Christians, too, I have to confess to you, we have a problem. We have to consider that, as far as we know, neither Jesus nor St. Paul were married or raised children, that there is a profound diversity of family configurations in our Bible, none of which is prescriptive, and some of which are indeed contradictory. There is evident tension for us, for example, between family as it is envisioned in Ephesians, which is severely patriarchal and authoritarian, and that found in Galatians, in which traditional hierarchies and boundaries are subverted and overturned. What would Jesus do? In the Christian Bible, there are 4 books called Gospels. These are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each one reports the story of Jesus through a different lens. It would be as though a future generation would remember Barack Obama through Fox, CNN, Al Jazeera, and Samuelu television. So when my friend says simply, what would Jesus do? I want to say that's the question. How do we know? The answer depends on which lens you choose to understand him. Nevertheless, I venture that there is a consistency in his personality and teachings that underlies all these editorial differences. And precisely that consistency makes the issue of family even more difficult to negotiate. When he calls someone to follow him, for example, he bids him to leave everything behind, including family. When Jesus' mother and brothers and sisters come to speak to him, and they bring him the message, your mother, brothers and sisters are waiting to talk to you, he says, who is my mother and brothers and sisters? Those who do the will of God, my Father, are my mother and brothers and sisters. It's a cold response, don't you think? It's a problem. And there are many other texts like that create difficulties. But I want to suggest to you tonight that Jesus stood squarely, I can't answer that, but I want to say right now that he stood squarely in the monotheistic tradition of his ancestors and of the 3 faith traditions tonight. When he was asked about what is the greatest of the law, what was his response? It's the Shema. It's the, thou shalt love, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor. From Leviticus, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. He stood squarely against all idolatry, against all idolatry, against all idolatry. Anything that comes between us and the Holy One can be an idol, and for Jesus, the family can become an idol. He understood how even our family can take a higher priority in our lives than our relationship with the Holy One. He saw how families could first become exclusive, and then self-justifying, and then even rejecting, and then violent towards others, leading to honor codes such as we see today. But in God's kingdom, Jesus says, people are neither married nor given in marriage. He was insistent on a fundamental new understanding of family, one that was radically inclusive of absolutely everyone. Well, our image of the family comes from the Victorian era. Images of family, of course, abound in the Bible. Jesus' first miracle, he wasn't hostile to family in quite the way I made it sound a second ago. His first miracle is reported to have occurred when he turned water into wine at a wedding party in response to a request from his mother. He refers to the Holy One as bridegroom or beloved. One thinks of Rumi when one hears that. And the New Jerusalem descends from heaven as a bride. Jesus enters into the family life of his friends and disciples. He blesses, heals, and welcomes children. At the end of his life, he shows the greatest tenderness and care for his mother. But in Jesus' world, there is no God but God. There is no place in Jesus' world, even for earthly fathers. Call no one father, he says. There is one Father,